Still with that story, the NPA says it's ready to prove in court the process of awarding those Transnet contracts for locomotives was flawed and possibly corrupt.
Well, the accused, as you may have heard, they are facing 18 charges. That includes fraud, corruption, contravention of the Public Finance Management Act, and the contravention of the Companies Act. These charges relate to the acquisition of 3 contracts for locomotives in Transnet between the period of 2011 and 2014. Now, in this process, when Transnet took a decision to expand and modernize its services, there was a need for these contracts or tenders for bidders to be called and bid for these tenders. And processes, the state will prove in court that processes were flouted, hence the accused appeared in court today. The matter is now postponed to 6 October for final investigations to be concluded. We are dealing with very complex matters. These are matters that emanate from the state capture. Now, in our approach, in our holistic approach as IDEC, we investigate the whole information that was provided in the State Capture Commission. Henceforth, you will realize that we have staggered our approach in terms of laying charges against or formulating charges against accused persons. This case also emanates from the acquisition of the 1,064 locomotives stemming from the previous case, but the facts are different. In this matter, we have 3 contracts, different contracts from the first case that is set for trial in February. There are 3 contracts additional to the acquisition of the 1,064 locomotives. These contracts are from the 100, which were supposed to be put on tender, and we have 95 again, and we have the entire 1,064, which was staggered. Now, the flouting of processes in these 3 contracts, that's where the state was able to come up with charges, formulate charges that we believe will be sustained in a trial.
Well, let's speak further then about the arrest and the subsequent appearance in court of those former Transnet executives, including Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama, joined in the dock today by Anuj Singh and Thamsanqa Jian. They were joined by the head of investigations at Open Secrets, Michael Marchant. Michael, a very good evening to you. Good to have you on the SABC. I think it's important to start first with the significance then of the arrest of these 4 men today in the broader picture of the ability of the prosecuting authority to go after state capture-related matters. How big a deal is this?
Good evening, Tembekile, and good evening to those listening. I think it's very, very significant. This is not the first Transnet case to come before the courts. There were a series of arrests in 2022, including of Molefe, Singh, Gama, and others. But it's significant, I think, for 2 main reasons. The one is that Transnet was, in many ways, the primary site of state capture. It was certainly the largest in monetary terms. We're talking about 75 to 80% of all proceeds of capture linked to the Gupta family went through Transnet. And of course, linked to that, the public cost of the amount of public monies that were lost due to the really widespread corruption there were absolutely enormous. But also, and I think that this is what the MPA spokesperson was alluding to in the clip that was playing just before we started this interview, is that a lot of the Transnet capture was linked to other parts of the Gupta enterprise. And so much of the money that was at the core of these locomotive contracts was extracted from Transnet and then laundered through other parts of the Gupta businesses and then used to pay for other things and used to perpetuate capture in other places. And so I think, for those reasons, the fact that the individuals who were called the architects of state capture by the Zondo Commission, absolutely essential that they are being brought before court on these types of very serious charges.
And on that note, you made reference to their arrest, Siyabonga Gama and Brian Molefe appearing in court on the matter related, or the 2022 matter, right? And now you've got what's been enrolled 3 years later, also related to a locomotives contract. Draw the distinction between the 2 matters and why it's important perhaps legally sound to try them separately.
So, Temekile, I'm going to be a little bit cautious here because I myself have been trying to piece this together this evening and this afternoon, trying to follow the court proceedings. And I'm not 100% sure that it is completely clear exactly how the matters are separate. So what I will say is that it seems very clear that the charges today relate also to what is called the 95 deal. This was one of the first state capture related transactions at Transnet for the purchase of 95 locomotives from China South Rail. And the allegations against Molefe Singh, Rama and others have always been that they pushed through that contract without proper processes when China South Rail actually didn't meet the requirements. And then really crucially, they inflated the contracts and made payments to China South Rail which were inflated and which didn't have board approval. And so that case, or anyway, from what I've heard today from the MPA, that seems to be part of the allegations today. It also seems from what's been said before court that there might be parts of the 1064 transaction that relate to some of the transaction advisory deals that were done on the side to raise the finance. That in particular relates to this 93 million rand payment that was made unlawfully, allegedly to Trillion, and how that money was then used. So I think that is the distinction. I know that before court today, Brian Molefe was, from what I've heard, complaining about the fact that these matters are too similar. But to be honest, at this juncture, I don't have enough information to comment, on the kind of legal position of those two.
I do want to ask you then, because whenever we talk about high-profile prosecutions, it's been a very slow start in terms of cases related to state capture specifically. It's one thing to make an arrest. The conviction is where ultimately the proof will be in the pudding, right? And would you say, with that premise then, Michael, that this is a must-win case for the NPA?
Absolutely. And as you've said, the MPA has made many arrests over the last 5 years. Many cases have been enrolled, and they often speak about the number of cases enrolled. Yet we're yet to see a successful prosecution. And so it's absolutely essential for the reasons we stated earlier, the importance of Transnet to state capture, but also in terms of setting precedent. And I would say that it's going to be so crucial on the Transnet case, for example, to see what evidence the MPA is able to get admitted. Are they able to get extensive parts, for example, of the Gupta leaks, actually admitted as viable evidence? And this case is really going to be a litmus test, I think, or one of the tests for their ability to show not just guilt in these particular instances, but in certain parts of the Transnet cases, how state capture was systemic. And that, I think, will help them going forward in so many of the other cases that they've indicated they're going to bring.
And Brian Molefe and Siyabonga Gama have undergone, I don't want to say a major change in the last 3 years, but they're now members of parliament for Jacob Zuma's Mkhonto weSizwe party. Some in that party are already saying that they believe this is the persecution of successful black professionals. How much political pressure do you think the NPA is going to face in this matter, given that context?
Look, the MPA is certainly under pressure, but they're also under pressure on the other side from a public that I think is incredibly jaded and tired of the impunity that has surrounded state capture. And I think for those who have been following these cases for a very long time and who followed the Zondo Commission and also the extensive reporting on these matters, I think we'll be aware of the depths of the very forensic evidence against many of these individuals. And I must say the MPA certainly publicly and IDAC has spoken about their kind of relentless pursuit of these cases. It has been very slow in many instances, but I think the real test for an independent institution and independent law enforcement is their ability to block out some of that noise, block out the political noise that comes from political parties who have those vested interests in those individuals that serve there, and really pursue their constitutional mandate, and that's to bring these prosecutions and see them through successfully.
Michael Marchant, good to talk to you, the head of investigations at Open Secrets. Grateful to have your time, as always, on the SABC.